All right, everyone, we're starting up really soon. If you're watching the VOD and wondering why the fuck I'm so quiet, I'm just sending out some links, so bear with me. Alrighty. All right, everyone, you would have been watching along with me a few days ago, I'm sure, when many of you hardcore enjoyers saw Frontier doing their thing in NAX Rampage. This has been building up for a little while now. I know the hardcore servers are only 8 weeks old, and yet here we are talking about a guild or the guild. Taking them down as my cat falls off the table. They took down the classic content. The game's done, it's beaten, it's over, and take a drink every time that one fuckwit chimes in with like, "Oh mate, world first was 20 years ago." Shut the fuck up. No one cares what you have to say. We want to talk about the people that did it on hardcore servers, on official hardcore servers, and for that reason, I've got the Frontier GM and kind of the man of the moment right now, Ahmpy, with me. Ahmpy, mate, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Excited to be here.
Mate, it's so great to have you here. And I, it's one of those instances where, like, I very rarely prepare for interviews these days. I haven't actually prepared for an interview for years. I think there's maybe like one interview a year now that I'll actually sit down and get my shit together and go like, fuck, I better actually know sort of what I'm talking about or what questions I want to ask going into this one. So, I mean, kudos to you for sort of achieving that level of, I guess, WoW fame at this stage where you've even got me shitting my pants a little bit going, fuck, I better not get this one wrong.
Yeah. A little flattering. I wasn't expecting that.
Well, man, we might as well start off on that note because we're going to be here for a while. There's a lot of things to talk about. I mean, to keep it very generic at the start here, and then we'll obviously dive in on the topic that everyone wants to talk about, which is that KT kill. How did the growing fame of Frontier affect you or as time went on, or were you expecting Frontier to blow up into what it did blow up into when you first came up with I presume it was you that sort of started and organized everything, right? But I'm sure there was a work of a lot of people.
Yeah, actually, it wasn't a lot of people. It was me and Bobka. We kind of made the guild, got it off the ground a couple months ago. He was going through some screenshots somewhere in like April or something like that, March. We were doing hardcore all stars at the time, and yeah, so that's since then. I never expected it to grow into what it is now. I feel like it exceeded my expectations in that regard. Initially, it was just I want to make a guild and I want to kill the world first bosses. That's the goal. And all the I don't know, growth or uh, glory, I suppose, was I didn't anticipate it to be so impactful.
Um, did you guys within the guild kind of talk about this much at all? Like, holy shit, like a lot of the hardcore world is watching us and people actually really do know kind of what we're up to.
Uh, n- yeah, I'm sure people did talk about it, but it was actually I feel like we were so caught up in just playing. Like we were raiding every single day for almost 6 weeks to get to that point, and it was just tackling what was in front of us at the time. At least from my perspective, it was like that. There was like no moment where I could sit back and kind of see everything that was going on in that way.
All right. Well, mate, let's dive in on Naxxramas itself for a little while here because that really is, the topic that everyone's got on the tip of their tongues right now. You made a really interesting comment right after KT went down. Like I said, I was there watching along live on your channel with about 25,000 other people. There were people on I'm sure numerous channels all tuning in and tens of thousands of people worldwide watching this feat get accomplished. But you know, in the wake of it going down, about 30 seconds later, it kind of sunk in, and I heard you sort of say, "I didn't think we were going to do it." And you were being very honest in the moment, and I really appreciated it, where kind of the veil was lifted and you were kind of like, if I'm being honest, I wanted this, but I wasn't so sure we could actually do it. So if I could get you to maybe expand upon that a little bit and talk about like your thought just prior to KT going down, or in the weeks leading up to it, how quote unquote doable or confident you really felt this whole thing was.
I think at the very beginning it was a dream. It was like, like we're gonna shoot for the stars. Not sure if we can make it happen. We ended up getting a lot of really solid traction in recruitment before hardcore servers came out. So I think really early on, I thought we were going to be able to do it without too much trouble. And you mentioned a couple like weeks before KT. I think for me, the longer that hardcore servers went on, the more I realized that we were like losing the attrition battle a little bit. We had really good players, but we were only like 150 people, and we'd be losing, one or two people a day. So we were on a ticking time bomb, I feel like. And I think that's what really, that's what really made me not sure if we were going to be able to actually pull it off. The weeks before, we had some really bloody weeks where we lost like 3 tanks in a day, and then we're questioning, okay, how are we going to kill Patchwork this week? Like, what are we going to do for 4 Horsemen now that we're losing all these people? So that's where we were, and I like one of my guildies analogies here, that we were a sinking boat, and we just needed to make it across the finish line before we fully sank. And that's kind of where we were at. We were so close to our last legs that if we lost 2 more people, it would be 39 men in KT.
Wow.
So like we were right there, just barely made it.
I had a bunch of questions about that lined up for later, and I'm kind of in two minds on whether or not I pursue this line of questioning now, or if I get to the KT thing that everyone wants to hear about. Look, we'll do what I'm usually, known for doing, which is we'll dive down the tangents and people, we can, float out the teaser of the KT talk in a little bit. By the way, mate, I just sent you the link for the live stream, by the way, if you needed that.
Oh yeah, thank you.
So many questions about recruitment and building the right kind, like building this guild up, but also getting the right kind of people that were really committed to what it is that you were doing, which was so specific and so niche. So I might start off on maybe just the point that you made about the war of attrition that you were fighting. Where was the chat with, officers or whatever of the guild? Where was the line in the sand in terms of thinking of dates, thinking of, guild members that you had up and running in a semi-viable state for NAX Ramus? What was the point of no return for you? Or even if it was a moment in time or a numbers game where you were like, we can't do it if the X happens?
Oh, we never really had too many chats about it. I think one of the biggest flaws that I had in the guild was I have trouble delegating things. So I was pretty much doing most of the things up until we got a recruit Drexel that came in and did a lot of logistics stuff for us. So it was really just all in my head. But there were a couple times where so 1 week we had our 4th and our 3rd tank die. If we had 1 more tank die, we could not have killed KT. Probably. Like Windforce dying.
Right.
But I think that's the only like hard line in the sand where it truly is unreplaceable.
Did you, on that note, God, I've got a million questions. You can hear me struggling where to go because I've got so many things I want to
answer them all.
Mate, and I also want to like I'm trying to word some of these questions correctly, not to be polite to you, but to be polite in general. When you're the GM of this kind of guild and you have attracted, some relatively high profile streamers to the guild who want to get in on the action and either go for glory or, be there just to be there, I think everyone was giving it a pretty good go. And I don't think there were really, well, it wasn't my impression that there were any fucking coattail riders or anything. Everyone seems to be going pretty hard. With the people that you got in the guild, how did you feel as the GM when you watched people over the weeks, sometimes dying either in the open world or in a dungeon or whatnot, gearing up? When you've been kitting people out, gearing them up for this end goal of KT, we want KT, we want a crack team of fucking assassins ready to go for, this outrageous idea that we have of killing KT, and then seeing people drop maybe to something like a stupid mistake. Did it bother you? Were there ever words exchanged, or how was it handled in guild, or how did you, like, now that you can really be honest, how did you feel?
Honestly, it was always, I couldn't take a step, or I was like doing so much that I couldn't take the time and be like upset about it. It was just like, okay, we're raiding tomorrow. How are we going to make it work without this person? And I think that's the best way that I can put it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was struggling. It was really a struggle at sometimes. Like when we had 5 deaths in EQ20, I was actually upset about that one.
Right.
I figured out at night. I was in bed about to go to sleep, and I look at this clip and I see 5 level 60 deaths. 3 of our tanks died in that run. And I'm just like, I'm dealing with it in the morning. I'm not even going to think about it. I'm just going to go to sleep and figure out what we're going to do tomorrow.
And did you wake up a little less angry?
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't really angry, but I was never really angry, but
well, upset maybe is the better word.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm getting at is it's good to hear that effectively it sounds like the ideology was just next man up. And, shit happens, deal with it. We just, roll with the punches and go with the next man up. So, and it obviously had to be that way to achieve the success that you guys did. If I can press you maybe, not to push the finger on the wounds too much, but if I can press you to maybe chat very quickly about that Nightmare AQ20 run, because one of my questions was going to be about AQ20 on the whole for you guys, because, we sit here and we talk about, how challenging raiding is in hardcore, just full stop. But then when we look at specifics and say, which one was causing the most headaches or really causing the most poo in the pants? I mean, I watch all the fucking death clips, and you'd have to be blind not to notice that AQ20 was popping up a fucking lot on a lot of these raiding death clips. So, talk to us about that particular AQ20 where you lost 5 people, maybe what got them and what you guys could have done better, and why you think AQ20 is either a good or a bad idea for raiding guilds in hardcore in general.
Yeah, I think AQ20 is fine, but it's one of those dungeons, and I think this is true for all dungeons and raids, is you need a backbone. You need someone who knows every single fight, and they can carry everyone else. Someone who will click a crystal, no matter what, if they're tanking or not, make a call that needs to be called, and you just need that. And I think what happened in that EQ20 is I had posted out that day. I was actually doing ICC PTR, which, that sucks. Just terrible timing there. And the tank made a really big mistake, and it just killed a couple people. I think that's the ultimate. Just, when your backbone fails, you lose a couple people. And I think that's what happened.
Well, so you were in that raid, right? You were making calls too, yeah?
No.
Or no?
No, I was not.
Well, okay, good. I'm glad we got that clarification, because, I mean, not to sit here and fucking, suck your dick too much, mate, but like the comments, I was following this a lot, and I spent a lot of time on Reddit and everything, and even weeks before this KT thing, comments started to pop up about Frontier, and this is not, I think this is by me saying this, please read this, everyone, as me more complimenting Ahmpy as opposed to, having a go at other people. But the comments really would come through that it's very, very obvious the difference between raids when Ahmpy's not raid leading it and someone else is, because shit seemed to go south more frequently when Ahmpy wasn't there. Now, again, I'm not trying to do this to kiss your ass too much, but did that put a lot of pressure on you to kind of, obviously you're dealing with raid lockouts too, but like really be super present? Were you feeling the weight of like, fuck, if I'm not there, who knows what's going to happen, blah, blah, blah?
Yes, there was 100% a time where I felt like I had to be in every raid in order for people to be safe. And it's just because I didn't have like a second hand or a second man, almost like a co-leader that could be there in the other run, in the 20 mans or the 30 man like Oni splits. I think until Drexel started leading, that helped a little bit. Yeah, that was definitely a real thing. And actually, I didn't even stop attending both runs. Like I would be in Discord for the first like 2-3 weeks. We were doing 20 mans. I was in Discord looking and making sure they were doing everything right, like kind of over their shoulder while someone was leading in the raid, and just correcting them if they were doing things a little bit questionably. And I stopped doing that like literally the last 2 weeks run.
I know, just to resurrect sort of a half question from before, and I'm not pushing this to get a certain response out of you, but like all I can say is I know how I would have felt if I was, in your shoes. I would have reacted maybe differently, where like if I'd seen people who'd been raiding with me in this kind of an environment go down with like some really high value gear on them, I would have been just kicking myself going, why the fuck did I give that item to that person? Oh, I'm a fucking idiot. I knew I was about to give it to the other guy and I fucking did it, and I should have listened to my gut and blah, blah, blah. That's what I would have been like behind the scenes, just, kicking myself and second guessing everything. I'm guessing that is more than likely probably not what happened with you, but how did you guys generally react or deal with like gear getting lost? And like, was there ever anyone like, Ahmpy, I fucking told you should have given me that shit, blah, blah, blah?
There definitely were some people that, I try not to have this idea or like philosophy on people dying because, well, I'll get into that later. But there were definitely some times where, like, for example, I gave Yam a weapon. I gave him a Brute Blade and he died the next raid. After he died on Azure Ghost. So this was his second level 60 raid death. And people were like, I can't believe you gave him gear. He killed his last character and he killed it again. Like, what are you doing? But I think it's really important to know that, like, well, at least from what I saw, when people died, it was just two like silly mistakes. Like, it happens. When people play 20 hours a day or 18 hours a day, they're bound to make a mistake at some point. So I think it's hard to really beat them up too much or like beat myself up about people making, a crucial mistake and losing gear because of it. It's just what happened.
It is fair.
And I know a lot of people, when they die, they feel really bad because I got this message so many times. They feel like they let the guild down. Like you're saying, how I had all this gear, I lost it. Like, fuck me. Like, I can't believe I did that to the guild. Yeah. And I don't want to, beat them up too much over that because they know, like, they fucked up and they lost their 400 day or 400 hour played character for it. So I can't be too upset. Like, they kind of already have to deal with the consequences of their actions.
Yeah.
I just have to figure out how to get us to move forward.
It really did accentuate for me, the vast majority of these sort of more high profile deaths that we're talking about. Not all of them, but most of them. It really did highlight, the very nature of hardcore, like you're talking about. Like, it's just a game mode that, as much as it goes without saying that you have to be switched on the whole time, even when you're that character that's geared out to the teeth, out there farming in the open world or doing whatever it is you're doing, you're never safe. If you are tired, if your brain is operating at half speed, if you're distracted for that, that one fucking moment is all it fucking takes to lose the 400 hours like you're talking about. And, everyone's human, everyone's able to make that mistake. And I think that people do get a little caught up in the whole like, oh, that person was a professional streamer. What a fucking idiot. But, and don't get me wrong, I'm guilty of that at times. But it really is like, you man, if you've been playing for 12 hours and it's fucking 10 o'clock at night and I should have gone to bed an hour ago, shit happens.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. That's what my philosophy is on the whole like people dying in guild too. It's just it happens. It sucks.
Mates, speaking of death, before we go into the specifics of the KT kill, which we will now dive into, at length, I'll put the cart before the horse a little bit here and just say that obviously people will be aware that, and if they don't know, to spoil it, you died during this encounter about halfway through or so, 2/3 of the way through. I just wanted to ask, I've got a couple of questions on this, but I'll start with like, given now a few days worth of reflection on it all, how did you really feel about losing your own character, but then balancing that against the joy of actually downing KT?
In the moment, I didn't really feel it. Like I didn't feel like my character died. I was still in the raid. I was still raid leading. And we took the screenshots together. What really happened for me is when everybody poured it out to Ironforge, it's like, oh shit, like I can't go. Like this is real. I actually can't log into this character again and play it. So for a little bit, it didn't even feel real. And then it just like sort of like hit me. There's like a point on my stream where I'm like, oh shit. I'm dead.
Yeah, you're almost still sitting there waiting for that res and it hasn't sunk in.
Yeah.
So there was a moment, again, just to take you back to the clips from the fight. Like there, I think, and I'm not taking a shot at you at all because I would have done the exact same fucking thing. I think there was a half moment where a little bit of frustration creeped out, and you were known to do this while you streamed your adventures through hardcore WoW. You were known to sort of not be, how do I put this? You weren't smiles and sunshine all the time. You were happy to sort of let your frustration show a little bit at times without, and to your credit, I would say, without being like overly toxic. Sometimes you would say like, hey, why the fuck hasn't this person been dispelled? Hey, healers, wake up. Is this person going to get a heal? Blah, blah, blah. I keep saying blah, blah, blah. Take a shot every time. But anyway, I think you let your frustrations show. And again, it was, to your credit, very, very quick, a flash in the pan moment. Then you got straight back to raid leading through death. When you died, I think you sort of made the comment about where the fuck was the heal or something like that. Was there any, like, in the moment, like, not animosity, but like, are you fuck, you kidding me?
I think a little bit, but it was really fleeting because I had to make sure that we still made the kill. I didn't really get that. I didn't like, there was no time to like let it marinate and really like think about, what could have happened and what didn't happen. Yeah, it was like, I kind of just sit back, like, I don't know, I think you can hear it in the clip too. I like sit back in my chair and I'm just like, fuck, like no fucking heals, man. Which, yeah, it wasn't even a Discord or anything. So it's not that bad. It's just a little bit of an outburst.
Fair enough. And like I say, I don't think there was anything wrong with it. But, it brings, the death brings about the next point, which it was the first thing that popped in my mind as soon as KT actually fell over. And you did see a couple of these comments in the subreddit being heavily upvoted. The word, as lame as it sounds, poetic comes to mind, in that it was very like inadvertently poetic to have you, kind of the driver of this bus, go down as the guild achieves the greatest success that you can in the game. I mean, I wouldn't imagine that is a great comfort to you now, because like you say, you can't play that fucking character. But do you agree or disagree that there's some form of poetic nature behind Ahmpy going down, with the KT kill?
I definitely agree. It's almost like a perfect script.
Mm.
Because I don't even have to deal with, what's next. Like, this is just the story. Set out to kill KT, die doing it.
Mm.
I think it's perfect. From a like newly content brain Andy, it's great for me too because I don't have to worry about trying to figure out what's next on that character
Mm.
or lead something else on that.
Well, on that, for like, the next of many tangents, it sounds like you hit, a level of zen in a way that I know I hit and many other players have hit with hardcore WoW, when either you die or you make it to 60 or you achieve the goal that you were attempting to achieve in hardcore. For me personally, it was very much so like relief, like, oh my god, it's
Yeah.
over. And I could let go and just be like, and not in like a rage quit kind of way. It wasn't like, oh fuck this game, I can finally fucking leave. I wasn't even enjoying it anyway. Blah blah blah. It's none of that. I fucking loved hardcore. Yeah, if you didn't know, if I fucking toot my own horn, we're kind of colleagues, Ahmpy. I hit 60 on my warrior, but
I saw that, yeah.
yeah, no, I was happy with that. But what I'm getting at is I basically stopped playing hardcore immediately. I ran a couple of BRDs after that, and I haven't played in the last 6 or 7 days because I'm just like, I did it. Like, I can finally stop playing the game. The old joke. Or actually, well, the joke is that you can start playing the game.
If you
But
start playing, yeah.
exactly. But I felt like I could finally stop playing the game, and I moved on to, Wrath, and I'm mucking around with RDF and everything now and doing that. But the question is, it sounds like it was the case. Was there that sweet relief? And are you going to be involved much in hardcore moving forward? Is it like, thank God it's over?
I am still going to be involved in hardcore. I think that's my main, I suppose, game at this point. But there was definitely a sense of relief for me. It was almost like a huge weight was lifted off my chest in twofold because playing at 60 was pretty stressful, leading raids and everything. And leading up to KT, it was getting worse and worse and worse. Like every week, it's like we're getting closer to our goal. We're, what could happen between now to stop or now and then to like stop us from being able to achieve this? Who's going to die? How are we going to stop them from dying? To the point that I would have nightmares about like ZG pulls going wrong. And I would make strats from my nightmares. Like, for example, one thing that was I can remember was like I had this one nightmare about how in Zul'Gurub there's priests that fear, and it's in a really densely populated area outside of Broodlord Mandakir or Bloodlord Mandakir. And if you get feared, you could pull another priest that would fear you more. So I made it like really. It sounds so lame. I made such a big point out of it to make sure that we had fear wards on everybody. Which that's kind of random tangent there, but
No, I love it.
so
Keep going.
so
Sorry.
that's like the sort of like level I was so deep in hardcore that like I was thinking about it every waking second of the day, even like not waking at this point. So it was almost relaxing to not have to even think about it anymore. My character's dead. We got the kill. I could do whatever I want. There's no stress. So it was really relieving in that sense.
Mate, don't feel bad or awkward at all or lame for bringing that up, because I'll tell you, I'm with you in solidarity, brother, and it's not just us. I've been reading these kinds of stories on the subreddit where I fucking shit you not, about 4 or 5 days ago, I woke up and I turned to my wife and I said, "Look, this is gonna sound really fucking stupid, but people have been talking on the subreddit about having nightmares that their hardcore character has died. And I literally just had one last night. Like, I've just woken up from a nightmare that my fucking hardcore character died." And my wife, it just so unimpressed, just turned to me and said, I think it's fucking time you stop playing hardcore. And I was like, you're probably right. Yeah. So that might have fed into me walking away from the game a bit. But it is like, it's kind of oddly real. Like we need this hardcore trauma support group in a way where this game mode is so, I mean, one could call it engaging, but, in another way you could call it like, it is so demanding to the point that it's taking over people's psyche and having them stress and worry for their very well-being, even unconsciously, which I find fascinating, quite frankly. But like, because it's a shared experience, because your story matches now with my story that I'm telling for the first time, and I've seen other people tell their stories on the subreddit. So it's a fucking thing.
Yeah, no, I think it's because of how immersed you get that it just feels, it's almost like the consequences of dying, right? They're so impactful that it almost feels real. It's like watch like um when I see like someone die in the raid, it like hits me. I'm like, oh my God, like they're gone. It's crazy.
Yeah.
There's really, really hefty consequences. And I think that's one of the biggest things with hardcore that makes it so good. And I think it's also a drawback, honestly. After doing the whole KT thing, the highs are high and the lows are so low. Like it's so polarized. It's such a polarizing game mode where you can have these moments of absolute like amazing glory and then just like completely like torn down. Where you just like get one shot and you're dead. You're like your character's gone. And I don't know if I can just talk about this real quick. It's a random. I used to think that hardcore was like the pinnacle of raiding. Like, oh, we can do it with no deaths. But I actually think after doing it, that it just has reinvigorated my love for classic raiding in general. And I would say that classic raiding normal is just better because it's like a stress-free experience. It's not as hefty. You still have like a good experience and you can raid and you can have fun without the consequence of like having nightmares about it.
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up. Put a pin in it because let's you and I have you listeners watching along live remind me about this as well. I want to have an elongated conversation with you about that after we're done with everything else, because I think particularly with what's to come maybe next at BlizzCon next month, people are probably needing to put a bit more focus on what they find fun in a game, and that contrast between normal classic rating versus hardcore rating versus retail rating, and the reason why classic, one of the many reasons why classic is so popular. I think you hit the nail on the head, and I've talked about this a fair bit in the relatively recent past on the show about, there's nothing wrong with, I use the golf analogy where like, there's nothing wrong with, obviously number one, people enjoying golf, but also when people go to the golf course, what do? They generally want to see the easy par 3 in front of them, maybe one tiny bit of water on the right, and just, hit your ball, not many sand traps, it's all good. They don't want to go to the fucking 13th or whatever it is at Augusta and have 83 sand traps and, a mile of water to hit it over. They don't want that. And there's nothing wrong with that. They want to relax. They want to chill out while they're doing their hobby. And that's, I think, what separates classic players from everyone else. But, I mean, do you think that's a fair sort of comparison to make?
Yeah, 100%. I definitely think so. A lot of people played, and like you said, it's a hobby. You're not trying to, yeah, you're not trying to like impress people necessarily. You just play the game, or a lot of people have goals. Like I know for a long time I think I had a goal of trying to be the best, or really just improve and just do really hard things and prove myself in that way. But I think for a lot of people, it's just a fun pastime, and I think that's the classic raiding scene where you can just join up, get your world buffs, pop them, and just kill the bosses. Super easy content. It's like a perfect place where you could just play your character, do a lot of damage, and just have fun.
Absolutely. Well, look, we'll come back to that, mate. But it's funny having you mention, you know, we're not playing to impress anybody, but then ironically, I'm here interviewing you about impressing a shitload of people worldwide through your gameplay. Again, I'll pull it back to NAX and everyone's screaming at me at home like, Josh, just fucking get to KT already. Mates, can I ask you to break down the fight itself a little bit for us? You know, if we get a little bit of a coach's commentary in hindsight now, when were the key moments for you? Everyone knows, I know you're going to talk about I think it's Tuki's clutch lay on hands on Windforce. We'll get that to come up, but anything else as well, the clutch plays, the big moments, maybe the moments that the poo really did hit the pants, the early setup and everything. Talk us through it, coach.
So the fight was actually going really well up until the first Frost Tomb, which the phase 1, nothing really happens. It's just a gauntlet of ads. You kill them as they come in. Super simple.
But still, to be fair, with phase 1, still key that no one does anything fucking stupid.
Right. Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's just with the territory though. If anyone does something stupid, they just die.
But phase 1 can go south. It's just that with a guild like yours, you're pretty confident that they can fucking handle it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I did have to mention not to multi-shot though. I've seen that. I've done that personally. So.
Right.
I used to be a hunter player. I know. Yeah, and then phase 2, it's just Kel'Thuzad himself. So he comes out, bring him to the middle of the room, and split up your melee stacks. And this is where like things could go wrong on the fight. Generally, if things go wrong, it's on KT. And the biggest things that he does are Frost Tomb and Mind Control. So Mind Control picks 5 random targets, or 4 random targets, and then the main tank.
Yeah.
So that always happens. And then Frost Tomb picks a random target and hits them for 100% of their HP. So they will die unless they receive heals. So that also chains to anybody nearby. And that is the first thing that went wrong with our fight. I saw that Mind Control went out, Windforce got MC'd since he opened, and I immediately, without even thinking about it, ran through the boss to try to turn it around and get to the tank position and tank it. So I was second tank there. And I didn't realize that Frost Tomb was off cooldown, and he blasted me in a melee group. And that's what killed me. So that's like the biggest thing that went wrong, is the overlap in spells was just so perfect. It lined up so perfectly that it was really bad.
It's funny because I hearing what you're saying, it really did, as a viewer at home, it really did watch that way as well. You guys were, even though it wouldn't have been for you, it really was a bit of a snooze fest up until that first oh shit moment that you're describing. Like, you guys were all over it. Everything was going to script. It was all fine. And for a second as a viewer, I'm kind of like, oh, here we go. It's going to be a fucking boring pushover. And then, like, in a flash in a pan moment, everything turns to shit. And there was a real moment in the, I want to say 7 to 8 seconds, or maybe even a little bit longer, like the 15 seconds after you died, where it really felt like a coin flip moment of, fuck, this could be a full wipe or they could kill it and I have no idea what's about to happen. And all of a sudden it became absolutely like, Compel-A-Vision. Could not turn off the fucking channel. It was amazing. But if I could get you to describe just like that key moment post your death, like the 15 to 20 seconds where everything was either going to be clutch or a fucking nightmare, what did you see?
It was actually not that bad. It might have definitely seemed like it was going to shit, but KT is a really RNG fight, and outside of the windows where MC and Frostblast kills people, it's actually not that scary. So all of his Frostbolts are interruptible, and except for the volley, and he doesn't melee too hard. So when it turned around, it killed me. It went right to 19, I remember. And I call him to shield wall. So he's basically immune to damage for 10 seconds, or takes very low damage. And then once that's in position, after that, the fight kind of stabilizes because Frost Blast just went out, MC just went out. People are coming out of MCs and getting back to their positions. And I think KT's like that, where it sort of has moments of chaos and then moments of stability. So right after that, when I died and it was on a tank, it kind of became stable again for another 30 seconds. I think for me, the scariest part was 30 seconds after I died when the next MC and Frost Blast went out. Because then there were ads coming out in phase 3. KT, when he hits 40%, a bunch of spiders come out and you have to tank them or CC them. And they were not getting CC'd or tanked. They were just hitting healers and it was going bad. And then an MC went out. And that's when it was scary for me. I think that would be my key moment where, like you were talking about earlier, that kind of brought in a level of skill almost with Tuki's lay on hands. So the MC went out, Windforce picked it up, and barely survived because of that. If that went wrong right there, if Windforce died, I think that's a full wipe.
You think 100% that's it? Gonskis?
I think, well, it might not be a full wipe, but at least 10 more people die.
Right.
Because that's now you have 0 tanks or 0 gear to tanks on KT.
Let's just take
that's crazy.
Let's take a moment just to really, I mean, even though there's not much arguably to analyze, but to take a moment to really talk about that lay on hands. Is it pronounced Tuki? Is that right?
Yeah, Tuki.
Yeah. So if you guys aren't aware, and sorry, I am conducting this interview with a lot of assumed knowledge, guys. I do apologize if you, number one, have no idea who the fuck Frontier are, who the fuck Ahmpy is, all this stuff. I'm just, acting as though you watch this along with, heaps of other people and know what's going on. But, there's a great screenshot going around the subreddit. And I reference the subreddit so much because I do read it a lot. I never fucking say anything because people are the worst, but the subreddit is a great read. There's a great screenshot going around of the logs that literally shows the 0.24 whatever second window between Tuki's lay on hands going out on Windforce and then the next attack coming in that would have blatantly killed him. You guys gave a shout out to Tuki. I think Windforce gave a shout out to Tuki at the end there saying, yeah, I guess that was pretty clutch or whatever. But talk to me, man. I mean, as the guild must have had a bunch to say about it since then. Talk to us a bit more about that lay on hands move.
That was an amazing lay on hands. A very clutch play, for sure. I think at that point, it's such... I had a lot of concerns about our guild not being clutch. This is something I talked about on my stream a lot. How we had people constantly dying in raids because people weren't clutching. There were no bops, there were no land hands, and people like Chilled Cow. I don't know if you remember that death. He AoE taunted a bunch of spiders and then died instantly. But it was avoidable if someone else did something. And I think that the most impactful thing, or the most interesting thing that I saw there with the Tuki thing, the Tuki lay on hands, it was perfectly timed. He finished his heal and he recognized, oh shit, he's gonna die, and he just sent the lay on hands. And being able to pull that trigger on something like a lay on hands it's a really hard decision because you lose all your mana. He has to really be confident in that decision. But he didn't hesitate. So I think that's really impressive.
It's I'm really glad you brought up that point of sort of diving in on the difference between a clutch WoW player and maybe a regular WoW player. And this will be the first of maybe a couple of junctures where I bring up this comparison to professional athletes. And look, I'm not going to be as silly to say they're a one-to-one comparison between what NBA players or NFL players do versus WoW players. There's some similarities there that people can go on about, but what I really wanted to talk about is sort of how pressure affects you, and how what when shit hits the fan, how the human mind reacts in the moment, and when you're trying to perform at a high level, no matter what you're doing, what you do wind up doing, and this is colloquially what we refer to as being clutch. Do you do what you normally do, or do you do what you should do in those heart in your mouth moments? Or are you a player that completely falls apart to pressure and just stops pressing your buttons and runs around with it, like a chicken with its head cut off? Um, I had a clutch moment in my hardcore run where we were doing a Moradon, and I was lucky enough to be running with basically the same party the whole way through to 60, and I knew my healers well, I knew my DPS well, and we'd just get like one or two randos in to come and help us, in to run the dungeons with us. And one bad pull, I only had like two bad pulls the whole way to 60, and one bad pull in Moradon, and I was sort of freaking out a little bit, like still doing my best to tank everything, but just having a paladin just be like, yep, no worries. And they bopped the healer at the exact right time when they had like 15% of their health left, mobs on them. No worries, there's a bop. I've got you back. No dramas. Not even not flushed in the slightest. Just, it's okay. It happens. Having players like that is obviously such a huge boon to any party or raid. And I'm sure that you've notice that you might have those kinds of players, and then the ones that maybe don't have that. Do you have, again, to do the crude analogy to like professional sports, like, do you have that appreciation for, cooler heads prevailing now, having gone through what you've gone through?
Yeah. Um, I definitely think that there were people who were really clutch, or really, able to stick with the pressure. And then there were people that weren't. Um, but I definitely noticed that there were a lot of people that were there through the thick and thin that really were clutch all the way through. Windforce is a great example.
Hmm.
Tukey, of course. Really reliable players there.
Can you remember any other sort of make or break moments, maybe not in Nax Ramas, but just on the way through your whole journey? Did you see any other, whether or not there are even people in Frontier, did you see anything that really stands out to memory of like, fuck, that was a clutch play, you just saved my life or saved someone else's life?
Oh God. There were definitely times where I felt like that. They were pretty. It's hard to recall that sort of moment right now. It's so hard for me to think about it.
All
There's
good.
just so many. We were doing so many raids all the time that they've kind of like blurred together a little bit.
All good, all good. Outside of the KT, well, actually, last question on KT. Well, last two questions. Um, no need to go into specifics, because obviously, what the guild talks about behind closed doors is the guild's business. But is there anything that you can shed any light on in terms of how the guild's been discussing or receiving this win, this victory? What was the general? I mean, outside of elation, have you guys really felt like you've sort of come together like a little bit of a band of brothers over this one, or brothers and sisters, I should say? And what's the chatter been like in the few days since it's gone down?
It's definitely been almost like nostalgic. A lot of people after the whole thing were like, congrats, congrats. And then they went and like a couple people were linking their screenshots of like how they got into the guild, getting recruited, or how it started for them. And I think that people going back and like looking to see how their journey started and seeing where they are now was a big. It was interesting. I didn't expect that. Um, but yeah, that's kind of one of the biggest things that maybe wouldn't be super normal that went down. Like people were really almost relieved, and then a little nostalgic. Maybe nostalgic isn't the right word, but
No,
kind of
I hear you.
finishing off their journey, I feel like is what happened, because a lot of people are are probably not continuing. There is a group that is still going to play under Frontier,
Hmm.
with Drexel leading it.
Hmm.
I'm not probably going to play, but we'll see. But for a lot of people, this was the end goal, and people, especially in like EU that were joining, can't really make raid times for NA long term. So it was. I mean, our kill for EU was at 3 a.m. for them.
Mate, just before you got to KT, I actually I'd fucked up the timing of the stream. I didn't tune in until you were at Saffron. Were there any other oh shit moments through this run of Nax prior to KT, or was everything pretty smooth? Nothing comes to mind.
It was a really smooth run up until KT. So we did on the Monday, we did a prog push of Construct Wing and then Vesuvius. That's where our oh shit moments were.
Right.
And then because we did it so recently, we killed 11 out of 15 on Monday. Then we just re-cleared it on Tuesday.
Mm.
So it was almost like a farm raid at that point. It wasn't super scary for us. We did have, I think, 2 deaths.
Horseman.
3 deaths, actually. We had 1 on trash, 2 on trash. Oh my gosh. And 1 in AQ. It was a nightmare. Those deaths should not have happened. Just people getting overconfident.
You lost a couple against the Horsemen as well, didn't you, in this clear?
Yes, those were just sad to see. I feel like they got so caught up in the moment that they forgot where they were supposed to be.
Was there any, like, when you were doing the Horseman fight, and obviously, like, you'd done Horseman. Was this the first time you did Horseman? It wasn't, right?
Yeah, no, this was.
Oh, it was. Okay. I mean, the question has to be asked, and everyone fucking knows where I'm going with this one. When you were doing the Horseman, was there any concern whatsoever from you, from anyone, about is anyone going to be that guy after what happened with Tiny Violin?
There was some concern, but after everything and the roster changes, I was really confident in our tanks being trustworthy. It was me, Windforce, Slams, Karashin, Gordon, and Drexel. And everybody there had kind of proved themselves as like trustworthy to me. So I wasn't really concerned about it, especially watching people do that. We did like a little, have you played Classic, like actually rated through? It went back in like NAX.
I've done like all the fights except for like I only did the first handful of NAX fights, but obviously okay. I know about them through Wrath. But when we were actually in Classic, I only did 3 or 4 fights in NAX.
So a lot of people do some sort of like practice for Horseman run where they like split up the raid and like pretend that they're in the fight and they go through the marks and rotations and stuff. We did that, calling like mark 1, 2, 3 transitions and stuff like that. And people are doing it properly. So I feel like I was worried a little bit of people messing it up until I saw that. And then I'm like, you know what? People are here to play today. Like they know this is the day where they have to show up and they're playing. I was actually surprised. Everybody, there were people in there that had never done the fight before that were just perfectly doing it. People weren't really making mistakes on 4 Horsemen. So that was really cool to see.
So did you find yourself like personally, I know you said you weren't worried and you trusted the tanks, but were you like somewhat doing a little bit of behind the scenes, like, can I buy any form of insurance in this fight? Like, is there anything I can do to minimize the risk here?
So there was, but it's not like I was buying insurance. So I was tanking the first 2 horse, or the first horse, nuking it, then we're killing the second horse, nuking it. I specifically assigned my most trustworthy tanks to Zeliek ahead of me, so that by the time I was there, it was tank 3, and I wasn't really worried because I would be there to, if something did go wrong, I would be there to like kind of intervene and stop the attempt.
Wait, sorry, I might have missed something. I'm freaking out here. So how come you didn't assign yourself to Zeliek?
So I didn't assign myself to Zeliek because I'm like one of the more geared tanks in the run, and they needed threat for the first horse.
Okay, right, all right, yep.
Yeah. And you need 4 people to tank Zeliek anyways,
Yeah.
with the rotation. So
Got you. Well, I mean, I'm glad it worked out. I mean, it's funny because Tiny Violin's name started coming up again in the last couple of weeks. I'm not sure if you saw this, where people were saying he's back, he's back. You know, they're having him raid again, and people were like, "You're not fucking serious, are you? Like, what the fuck is going on?" What did you was that with you guys? I can't remember. Was that with Frontier or HC Elite? I can't remember.
yeah, no, that was Frontier.
Yeah,
We had him
what
in
was
our
the go
guild,
there? What was the story?
I invited him as kind of like a social, but I don't know if Bob could told him or if he just wanted into the raid. He started putting Frontier like Raider in his title or something
Right.
when he streamed. So people really were concerned for a while that he
Right.
was going to be raiding. But no, I invited him under the, this is a social, role here.
Yeah.
Or there will not be a raid spot.
So he never actually did a proper raid with the A team there.
No, I don't think. No, definitely not 40 bans. I don't think he did 20 bans with us though.
Okay.
Either.
Yeah, because I mean, you know what the fucking player base is like. They're all got their tongues wagging, going like, "Oh, he'll get a fucking slot in the 40-man team. It's going to be mayhem."
There was a point where, I mean, if Tiny would have probably made it into the raid instead of a 40th man, or instead of a 39-man raid. Like, I would have invited Tiny for like Saffron at 39-man for Horseman, and then he could come in for Saffron. I mean, it's not like he could grief it.
Right, but But maybe wouldn't have gotten the invite for Four Horsemen.
Yeah, definitely not trustworthy on for Horseman.
Oh, there you go. It's on that note. I have to bring this up. It seems like streaming and hardcore WoW was really just, one of the great mad scientist fusions of all time. It really did get people watching. It drove up a lot of interest in World of Warcraft again. You'd have to be sleeping under a rock to not see the online impact that hardcore had on just chatter about World of Warcraft again. It was, and I was shouting out Blizzard saying like, they do seem to, be hungry for wins in the modern day and age. And Blizzard got, in my opinion, a big W with hardcore servers, and kudos to the classic team members who really pushed for this. And I think it's been a great success. But in that streaming environment, we all know what's going on. There has been a bunch of streaming and particularly like, solo streaming, but also raiding streaming and dungeon streaming as well, of people that like, people do wonder, oh, was that legit, or are they just dying for the views and all that kind of shit? I don't want to get too hard into, whether or not your favorite streamer died for the fucking views. But my question for you, Ahmpy, is more like, people were talking about Frontier and pushing the content in such a hardcore fashion that it was like, it was risky in that people would be like, are they going in early just for the views, sort of almost pseudo hoping for a wipe? Which I don't buy into that, let me just say. But like, there must have been a delicate balance in your mind, timing wise, of we don't want this Frontier thing to grow stale, but we also do want to accomplish our goal. So, if we're going in a little bit undercooked, and I think you've said the guild was relatively undergeared for KT, then so be it. We've just got to do it now because we're not going to be able to do it later, versus like this being for the views. Do you know what I mean?
No, I 100% do. And I think we had like 10 people in pre-raid BIS on KT. If you look at it like that, people that didn't even really have ZG gear or anything, because we were so like deep into our roster that we were pulling people in that I never thought would be there. But I think that in itself kind of proves a point that you don't actually need the gear. It's execution based. All of the deaths that we had, every single one of them on our clear, 15 out of 15 NAX, was a mistake. There was nothing based on gear. Not a single thing. Gear could have saved them if they had enough HP, like in the case of J-Law, or Life is Moot. They died on 4 Horsemen to like 1,000 overkill, which isn't a ton in the grand scheme of things. As if they take off their like, 0 stand pieces, they get that easy. So I think one of the biggest things was we were pushing the line of what we thought was possible with the strength of world buffs. I feel like that's the key there. We actually put in a lot of time before launch analyzing HP, DPS numbers, world buffs, how much gear we thought we actually needed. And it was actually 8 weeks was my guess. I thought that we would be ready for KT to kill it 8 weeks in. And I think going back, if we had to do this again, I think we could have cleared KT at 4 weeks.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think the last 3 weeks that we raided were actually a net loss for us.
That's really
because
interesting.
We lost people every raid.
Something I'd fucking pay to watch. I'll tell you that much. That would have been wild. The week 4 clear of KT.
Yeah, we would just... Yeah, because we didn't even get any gear from BWL for 2 weeks. Literally none of it. It just was terrible loot. We got really nothing that got used on AQ. We got a shield. All of our tier 3 died with the warriors that died. So really, we were going in there with like 3.5, 4 weeks of raid loot across our raid. It wasn't even very much. So if if there was a season 2 hardcore, if I wanted to lead another one, the first thing that I would tell people to do is a level 20 horde character to get WCB, and then we could clear NAX week 2. We got enough people attuned. There's so many like logistical challenges getting there, but I definitely think we overestimated what we would need. So it definitely wasn't for the content. I think we were more than prepared to do the bosses.
I want to just quickly ask you about something you mentioned there, and you said the magic, or 2 words I should say, that is world buffs. One of the dumbest fucking takes I've seen about your kill of KT has been people on Twitter and whatnot. It's been more a Twitter thing than a fucking subreddit thing, but Twitter's a fucking weird place. All these people on Twitter going like, I couldn't help but notice they did it with world buffs. Well, they're not fucking gamers. I want to see if, it'll be a world first when a guild does it without world buffs. And I'm just like, shut the fuck up, you fucking idiots. One of the comments was like, and I'll say this so that you don't have to, and not to, I'm not trying to prod a fucking feud here or anything, but I'll just say like, a lot of these same people were like, well, Kunyan's guild is going to do it without world buffs and that's their goal. So when they achieve that, we'll consider that the greater achievement and the true world first of hardcore WoW. And I'm just like, fuck off. Like, if you think someone who does this with world buffs is a problem, then you're a fucking idiot. And then you're also a fucking idiot, for thinking that, Kunyan is anything other than a fucking average player in 2023, if you've been watching some of those clips. But anyway, Ahmpy, what do you say to people who say you did it with world buffs and that's cheating?
Well, it is cheating. It is. Our characters are so strong with world buffs. Most of our power came from world buffs. It wasn't gear. Most of it came from the world buffs. So, I mean, they're not wrong, but that's just how Classic is. That's the balance. So, if it's in the game, we're going to use it.
Well, that's the thing. You gamed the game. That's fucking part of it.
Yeah.
It's funny because I really, in a post 2019 Classic release world, I'd never seen as much chatter about someone like cheating by using world buffs, and I was like, that's weird. But anyway, the world buff conversation is a fucking another one for another day, and we've had SOM now, and we've had the experimentation with and without world buffs, and people can feel how they want to feel about them. But anyway, I digress, mate. I want to ask you about you're getting a lot of love and affection from the Classic player base post not only this kill, but also in a world, and again, I'm basically just fucking filleting you here on podcasts this whole time, so I hope you're not blushing too much. But after you died, you were getting a lot of credit, and I felt this as well in the moment for your behavior post-death in continuing to raid lead, without being flustered too much, and helping the guys out through the kill, rather than just, rage quitting and telling everyone to go fuck themselves and walking away from your computer. What was that like? I've asked you a little bit about what it was like to die, but what was that like in the moment, sort of raid leading while also dealing with the, oh shit, I'm not part of this anymore? Is it, I mean, everyone says it's easier to raid lead when you're not actually in the fight. How did you feel?
I kind of touched on it before. It almost didn't feel real. I was annoyed a little bit because there was a thing on the middle of my screen I couldn't open. I couldn't do anything because I was a guild leader and it told me to transfer guild. So that's like
so many guild leaders die in hardcore. It's on like every second clip. It's insane.
I've seen it. Yeah, I was actually just thinking about that because I just watched a classic death compilation. It's like the first two were just guild leaders dying. Like I forgot that it's not normally like that. But yeah. I really didn't feel it in the moment. I was kind of just focused. I was so hyper focused on making sure that we got the kill that it didn't even like hit me until really after.
Fair enough. But on the sort of emotional investment or practicality of it all, did you find it easier to raid lead as an observer as opposed to being involved in the fight?
No.
Oh, really?
Because Classic Warrior is basically glorified observer anyways. Like I'm literally pressing for me I press E4 and 3. Just pressing 3 buttons all the time. So I just scroll out and look around. That's one of the things that I do. I think I do the best is what makes me a good leader isn't necessarily that I'm the best mechanical player. I'm not. I'll admit that for myself. I'm not. But I think I have great
situational
observation skills and being able to recognize things from a holistic raid view. And I think a lot of raid leaders don't really have that. Where I've played tank for years, I've played DPS for years, 10 years, and I've played healer for like 5 years. So I have seen it all, and I can anticipate what the other people are thinking in my raid and how they're going to react to things, and kind of get a whole view of everything as a unit. So I tend to focus on that sort of thing and making sure that everybody else is doing their job. It may be micromanaging people if they're being stupid, things like that. But yeah, so I feel like it didn't change anything for me because I'm almost like a cameraman anyways, just pressing my buttons and not even thinking about it, just focusing on the raid the whole time.
Mate, I wanted to take this moment, and we're pretty much wrapping up the KT talk, and we'll talk about a few other things with Frontier. But before we move on, one of the big, more interesting talking points about hardcore WoW for me has been, people's level of comfort with breaking down other people's deaths. And it's interesting because, and this is the second time I'll bring it back to the professional sports analogy, where I say, generally over time, as professional sports have built up over the decades, it's very much been so basically accepted that the average layman can give whatever comment they want on whatever game they've watched, basketball game, football game, whatever. And, if you weigh 450 pounds and you've never fucking picked up a football in your life, people are generally okay with you criticizing the quarterback's choice of throw on a given play. It's just something that we can sit back, observe. You don't have to have played the game to be like, well, I've watched a lot of football and I can tell you that I think this wrong because they should have done that. It's funny how with World of Warcraft Hardcore, it's become a bit more somewhat of a touchy subject where, some people say, oh, there's a player behind the keyboard. Who's to say you would have done any better? We all freak out in hardcore. People press the wrong keys or, just freeze up. Don't criticize them. Who are you? You probably can't get past level 9, blah, 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 blah. I'm still of the opinion that everything is open game. I'm sorry. I treat it like sports. If I see a death clip, I'm like, I've got no problem with people saying that guy fucked up. What a numbnuts. He should have done X, Y, Z in the moment, right? I mean, before we get to sort of maybe you specifically, how do you feel about all of that, Ahmpy?
I actually disagree.
Okay. That's fine.
I think that when you're watching something like football, you're watching people that are very good at it.
Yep.
But you wouldn't go to like a little league game and tell like some 8-year-old that they're doing it wrong.
That's true. I guess
I think a lot of people forget that, like the skill in WoW is not correlated to age whatsoever. It's purely just, how much experience they have with it. And when you have like someone who's played, 1 hour a day for a year, and this is like their first time getting to level 30, and they make it into a death clip compilation and people rip them to shreds, I think that's a little weird.
Oh, I completely
But if it's somebody like, a respected good player and they fuck up, tear them down, dude.
Yeah.
Like, all fair game. But I do think there's definitely a line where it's definitely based on the context a little bit and their experience. Because they don't want to, somebody's just playing for fun and, streaming.
No, I completely agree with you. In like it's a tough one because in the instance where maybe knowledge becomes a bit more of a factor. Like if it's the 8-year-old kid playing WoW for the first time, of course you're gonna feel a little bit more shy about being like, look at this fucking idiot who didn't feign death and blah blah blah. Of course, like that all goes without saying for sure. I'm with you there, but I do see that like WoW players, we in general, and this is a whole other 1 hour conversation for another day. We do in general seem to work on the assumption. We all presume, well, not presume, but we like to assume that is a competent player behind the keyboard. We'll just slot in, the averagely skilled player behind that particular clip and then say, oh, we'll tear them down because they should have known to do X, Y, and Z if they are the average player. But you're very right to point out, and we do often forget this, and you're right to have a go at dickheads like me who are like, hey, mate, average still means average. Average isn't everyone.
Yeah, I even feel like average players are pretty bad on average, though. So
100%.
It's usually fine.
100%. Oh, mate, don't fucking go nuts. Doesn't bother me. But so in that, I personally, I've just been like, I enjoy not so much people like this. Don't get me wrong. There's a line. You don't get personal, but like I've got no problem with people constructively picking apart a death clip and being like, oh my God, why didn't they hit escape here and then use this item there and then do that? But it's all good in hindsight. Like we all say, it's 2020 to pick apart the perfect escape from any given scenario. But with that in mind, Ahmpy, if it's okay with you, I figured we might break down your death a little bit, if that's okay, Sunshine.
Of course, yeah.
All right. Now, mate, I've got a couple of comments here from, again, we've got the keyboard warriors, and I don't want you to hold back in your response, quite frankly. I won't give the Reddit usernames, but I'll just say a couple of things that I've read, and we do this very much so tongue-in-cheek. Here we go. Comment number 1. Lordy, he killed himself running through the middle and getting tombed. If he was the target, he killed that whole melee stack too. What was their priest doing? Let a whole group tick out. And I'll read the second comment as well that says, someone in the melee stack was the target. He killed himself by moving at all. He could have just stood still and lived, and one person could have kicked the frostbolt, and another person could have healed anyone in the frost-blasted group, and not all of them would have died. It's like everyone went AFK after the mind controls went out. When you hear shit like that, what do you say and how do you feel?
They kind of did. That's kind of right. They kind of did go AFK. The priest, so in guild chat, the priest admitted that it was his first time, doing KT, and he felt really bad because he fucked up. Not my death, the melee death. There were 3 melee deaths that should not have died, because he didn't heal. But for my death, the guy. It is hindsight, Andy. That is definitely a hindsight, Andy. Don't run through the middle. You're going to get tombed. But it happened at the perfect moment. You know what actually could have happened is if it happened and I was like a little bit more to my right, it would chain to the entire melee group. Like I'm talking all 15 melee would get hit there. If that happened, that might have been a full wipe. I should not have moved there. I fucked up. I should not have moved. I just instinctively did it without even thinking.
Hmm. It's actually.
I don't
Sorry, keep going.
I don't think that comment's necessarily wrong. The whole like I killed myself. I did actually with doing that movement. So
It was really interesting to see the lengths, and again, it's fuckwits like me. Even though I don't provide these comments personally, but it's fuckwits like me that want to do the backseat driving, and you know, the push and pull argument over quite a number of comments, and people were really getting into it. No one was getting particularly personal about you or anything, but there really was a lot of push and pull about where to attribute blame. Well, not necessarily blame, but like everyone was trying to pinpoint who, like what killed who, and obviously what could have been done to counteract that. And I find it fascinating that with this game as old as it is, and with as well known as it is and worked out as it is, that we still get all the players, you know, the big brain raiders getting in there going, no, they actually should have done this. No, well, I say they should have done this. I fucking love it, quite frankly.
I think it's such a multifaceted issue that there's like nobody's necessarily wrong either. The fight went to shit. There's so much going on, and it's so RNG based that like, you know, the MC goes out, so the mages aren't even targeting the boss, so they're sheeping. There's MCs going out and hitting priests, so they're like fearing. Maybe they're not healing their group. I'm moving. I get frost tombed at the exact moment that I could not have gotten frostbolt or frost tombed. If I didn't get frost tombed there, nobody would have died on KT at all. I swear. Because it made the fight so much more hectic, me getting hit there. When I got stunned, the boss moved, so actually no melee were in range to kick. But all the mages were sheeping. So there was no kick like targeting the boss. But that's the only thing that would have saved me. Would be a kick. So I would say that if any of them is more correct, kick is the thing that went wrong. I took a 7k frostbolt that nuked me.
Well, yeah, there was this one comment. I wasn't going to add too many more, but there was this one comment that sort of goes along those lines. It says, whether, and again, people were picking this one apart, but someone goes, they're agreeing with you a lot, saying, you know, if you watch the clip, it's pretty obvious that it's not Ahmpy's fault and it's just super unlucky timing. The mind control goes out on the main tank, and Ahmpy is the second tank, so he goes to taunt or at least move into position, and the tomb goes out instantly. If he didn't move, then the group he'd been standing in would have been dead instead. The real fuck ups are the heals, and that no one kicked the frostbolt that actually killed him. He wouldn't have just died to tomb, which is basically exactly what you're saying, right?
Yeah, I shouldn't have moved though, but
oh well, these things happen, mate. We can look back and laugh. Anyway, no, thanks for having a bit. I want to have a bit of a fun with that. It's almost like a bit of a play on mean tweets, but thanks for being okay with sort of accepting your reckoning.
I love reading them. I actually
do you actually go back and read them? Yeah. Do you read them?
Yeah.
That's good to know. I mean, I probably would as well if I was in your position, but I don't know. I've probably got very thin skin at the end of the day, so I don't know. At least we get, you know, comments like this one with 511 upvotes saying Ahmpy is a real one. Never seen such a cool-headed leader. He did it and he went out with a bang. Congrats, Frontier. Which, you know, I completely fucking agree with. And
that's wholesome.
Like I said, it is very wholesome, and you won a lot of fans for your, you know, cool-headed leading. And I wanted to touch a bit more, and God, what are we now? An hour and 20 minutes into this. I think we'll fit everything in about the next 45 minutes or so. How are you going, mate? Are you good?
Yeah.
All good.
Solid.
Okay.
But wait, before we move, sorry, I got to call someone out. I had some guy call me a dickhead for saying no fucking heals after I died, dude. That was a comment that I got on my own stream.
For asking where the heals were.
Yeah, what do you think about that? Do you think that's
look, I think, in all honesty, I'll tell you what I really think, Ahmpy. All right, no filters here. I'm never a fan of like any form of toxicity in gaming. I'm a big crusader against toxicity. But having said that, it's what you define as toxicity. And I think that I can't, like something like what you did in that moment, mate, I've fucking done that. Of course I've done that. We all get frustrated, man. I'm a sportsman. Like I played rugby and basketball my whole life. I've fucking called out my teammates. Doesn't mean we don't go and have a beer after the fucking game. In the middle of the game, I've said to my best fucking friend on a basketball court, what the fuck are you doing? You know what I mean? It fucking happens. There's a fine line between like truly toxic to the point that like you're an asshole who's tearing your team apart, versus just, people eliciting frustration in the moment. I don't have a massive issue with those like 3 and 4 out of 10 moments of like calling someone out. People will really be divided on this one. I feel that's probably an interesting topic for another day, but obviously I feel like the vast majority of people will be like, no, you never, ever, ever under any circumstances say anything negative about anyone in your party or raid. But I'm just not sure if that's necessarily a realistic goal. Yeah.
Things get heated so fast. I mean, even just like between friends, things still get heated. It just happens.
Yeah.
Like, it's natural.
It depends how far you take it. Like I said, there's nothing.
Right.
There's
I
nothing
guess if you
criticism.
Personal, like really fucking blow up, right?
Well, 100%. You hit the nail on the head. The word is personal. Like, there's nothing wrong with venting frustration, but there is something wrong if you take it to the personal extent. Like, I was just a stupid example. I was fucking, doing RDF in Wrath yesterday, and like, it's a very, very simple like Mana Tombs run or something stupid. And like I'm the tank and there is literally fucking no damage going out outside of me. I've got aggro and everything. All the healer has to do with their 3/4 of a full bar of mana is just pump their heals into me. You have one job. And like this healer sort of kept letting me die. And I at one point I had to turn to him and be like, dude, is something going on? Like, where are the heals? And the guy's like, well, fuck, what do you want me to do? And I'm like, I just, you're a healer and I'm not getting heals. And some people would call that toxic, but like, I'm not calling the guy a cunt or like, going after him and his family or anything like that. But like, I think it's fine to sort of mildly not call people out, but be like, hey guys, can we get our fucking heads in the game? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think this is a whole topic, like thin skin, like everything's a offensive sort of topic.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people would get upset about that, but I mean, it's normal to me.
I don't play a game, like I said, it's a hobby. It's for fun. We're playing video games for fucking fun. I don't play my video games to get called out. I respect that. But I've never had a problem with someone saying like, mate, you got to be a bit snappier on those heals. Or, mate, you've got to get that fucking aggro off me. Like, you're killing me here. And I'll be like, oh, shit, sorry, mate. No worries. I'll get on that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's respectful to your party, too. Because, I mean, if you're, like, fucking off, you're not doing anything. You're, like, AFK, like, drinking a beer, looking at your other monitor, your tank dies. Like, that's, that guy's not having fun for you just chain dying in the run. I mean, it's a little bit of respect both ways.
Yeah.
If you're playing really bad and not being attentive and everything, I mean, deserve to be called out.
Well, and I'm talking about just in fucking Wrath RDF, you know what
exactly.
I mean? Where there's no stakes whatsoever, let alone in a hardcore environment. So like, same deal, like, I didn't say anything to this player, but I've definitely noticed, and God, we really are stretching. We're going to sort of highlight me as an overly toxic player in a second. I really did. The joke about me, Ahmpy, is I started out as this babe in the woods when Classic came out. I played the game 20 years ago, but I'm the filthiest casual of all time. I am very much so living long enough to see myself become the villain, because I have gone from that super wholesome, let's all have fun guy to slowly turning into the, more hardcore, like, jerk, if you will. But like, I've definitely seen DPS players in Wrath RDF dungeons already, and RDF has been out for all of 3.5 seconds, where like, mate, we're the same level, we're the same gear score, and they're doing they're a DPS player and I'm the tank. Granted, prot warriors are very strong, but like, they're doing a fifth of my, and I'm not fucking joking, they're doing like a fifth of my damage. And I'm like, mate, when you you leave a dungeon and you've done 100k damage in 20 minutes, like, let's all just say that you're almost basically not pressing your buttons. I didn't say anything to
Yes.
these players, but I could have. And I was sort of like wondering about talking to my Discord, going like, where's the line where you say like, hey, are you doing anything? But then, like you say, in a hardcore environment where everyone's fucking life is on the line to these players, like, where is the etiquette? What does one do?
Yeah. Actually, it's funny you mentioned RDF. I did a Pit of Sauron the other day. Uh, Heroic Pit of Sauron Gamma. So this is like heroic plus plus plus. This guy's queued into us and is wearing like pre-raid, he's like solid. It's not terrible gear, it's whatever. And is doing 800 DPS
Yeah.
in Wrath.
Yeah.
And we get to this first boss and I look at the numbers and it's just melee. The guy is not pressing any buttons over a 2-minute fight, didn't press a single thing. And I'm like, okay, I just, I didn't say anything. This might be farther than you would have gone. I kicked him.
Right.
I vote the kick.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's some really questionable performances in RDF. There's just like nothing on the line.
I'm still very anti min max, and that has kind of been my shtick for years now. Where I'm. It's funny, obviously, me having a laugh and chatting with you here on the show, Ahmpy, where you've almost, whether or not you accept it, you've almost come to personify the ultimate sweat in the game right now.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
I mean, dude, I'm not afraid to admit that. I'm definitely the fucking a sweat lord.
and that's fine. And I'm all for people playing how they want to play the fucking game. I've just always been a huge advocate for not giving into the sweat, like not letting the sweat tell you that you're bad at the game for operating at 80% of their capacity. Do you know what I mean?
100%. Yeah.
But there is still a line, and I'm all like, there's nothing wrong with being an average player in World of Warcraft as long as you are giving effort. But I will fucking crucify you when I see zero effort.
100%. I'm actually a very similar mindset there. I don't get upset at people if they're bad or, it's just people don't care that or don't put any effort in, like you're saying.
Like I mean, while we're sharing horror stories, I hope this is not supposed to be a thing. I had this is the 100k player I told you about at the end of the Mana Tombs run. Looked at the logs and it's like, there's literally like 47% of their damage was from death and decay. And I was like, I feel like that's not supposed to be that way. I don't know.
It might be.
Maybe.
I'm not sure how it works on DK. It's definitely a good spell.
Yeah, it's a great spell, but like they were barely pressing their other buttons. Anyway, it was a weird one.
Yeah.
Mate,
I've never played DK.
Let's move on. Yeah, I'm probably going to get all the emails now going, Josh, you fucking idiot. That's exactly
Oh,
where
you
damage comes
the
from.
DK mains.
Yeah. Mate, on the I touched on it very, very early, but on the loot in Frontier, you did sort of answer it, but like, what was your loot system? How did you decide what went where quickly in the moment?
I pretty much just guessed where it should go.
Just it was a bit more of a fly by night willy nilly system.
It was just like, I mean, for me, it was basically like, just give it to the person who'd make the best use out of it for our cause, which was, kill KT. And I definitely got a lot of criticism on loot for taking a lot personally, but then also giving like Windforce or other tanks. But at the end of the day, that's like the only gear I really that mattered. You kill Patchwork, nothing else matters. So I wasn't really concerned with where things went. I would kind of just threw it out without a second thought. Kind of like, oh yeah, that seems about right. This goes to this guy. Obviously, I think generally my decisions weren't like abhorrent, but I've played Classic enough and on multiple different characters to know like, oh, this is probably like a warrior item, or like, this is probably, not a big upgrade for this guy or whatnot. But it was a loot council with pretty much just me. Especially after Bobka died, it was literally just me. And then Drexel later on.
Mates, the next like half dozen questions are going to kind of be all over the place, but we'll see where we go with it. Um, I alluded to earlier, the fuckwits that do one of my most hated moves online, which is, and there's so many of them, the people that want to point out that, world first happened 20 years. It's the worst joke on the internet. World first happened 20 years ago, you fucking idiots. Like, shut the fuck up. But the reason I bring this up is there was a little bit of a wrinkle with hardcore in that hardcore was obviously so popular on Bloodsail Buccaneers, and I know you played a shitload of Bloodsail Buccaneers prior to the official server coming out. It was so popular. It's the reason we're all here with official servers. Bloodsail absolutely popped off. The community was so amazing with how they really put all that together and built this movement, if you will. It did spill into very hardcore raiding. And, we mentioned the name Tiny Violin, and we all know that infamous moment. And there was, a NAX clear on Bloodsail, and a lot of people talk about that and talk about also the fact that it was on an unofficial server. And, some people say that, once you hit 60, the rules kind of got a bit murky with some guilds, blah, blah, blah. Fuck, I wish I'd stop saying that. How do you feel now as the guild leader of Frontier that did it on the official server, where there's no disputing whether or not you guys made it all the way? When you, and I'm treading this ground very carefully because I do have very good friends who are very, very involved with the raiding scene on Bloodsail. How do you feel when people do sort of half bring up that argument about like, HC Elite or whoever did it first on Bloodsail, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm not trying to start a fucking war of words here, but like, how do you kind of view the landscape?
It's just not the same. I think that, in my perspective, it doesn't matter unless it's on an official server. And now, not to discredit what they did, I mean, they cleared it on hardcore, and I don't even think that they are necessarily disingenuous with appeals or other things like people make it sound like they were, but I don't think so. I think they legitimately cleared it, and I mean, they're showing that they have the ability on current servers. They're doing very well. But in my eyes, it just wasn't official, and I think that matters for a lot of people, whether they admit it or not, because it's just like a for fun game mode, and there's some questions, some uncertainties. I think when people have any level of uncertainty about it, it's just they're gonna pick it to shreds. Whether it's appeals or trading like non-solo self-found, whatever people were saying. I've seen a lot of it about how it's not a real achievement. But I almost want to draw the comparison to like private servers. Now, obviously, this isn't the same because Classic got cleared by people in original Classic, but in the same way that private servers kind of made Blizzard make official Classic again, nobody talks about like who killed world first Dragon Astarius. Just not official. I mean, that's an achievement at the time, but I think that the scope of what they're saying is limited to that server and that like environment that people were a part of. I don't even know who did it. So things like that even though they have impact like Astarius or private servers, whatnot, on getting an official server, it's just not the same. So I think people can see that too across a lot of things.
Having said that, I can only presume you guys in Frontier must have gotten either people playing for you or people wanting to play with you that came from, the very, very hardcore scene of hardcore on Bloodsail Buccaneers. So with your recruitment, how was that sort of the weirdness of the initial recruitment phase for you? Because you guys were getting some popularity early on, and the word gets around, this is going to be the guild going for all this glory. The streamers start going to you like flies on shit. Average players start going to you like flies on shit. Everyone's kicking down your door all of a sudden, wanting to be part of Frontier. How did you deal with do you vet? Is it impossible to vet? Do you just kind of, deal with people as you level and see who makes it and who doesn't? Talk to us about the first couple of weeks there.
Um, I would get like 20 whispers a day that I just straight up ignored. I don't like dealing with recruitment.
Mm.
I don't do it very well. I'm not very inclined to do that. Um, but we did vet the people that joined our guild initially. We had a strict no invite policy. No one could join unless they had someone that was in the guild that would vouch for them, because of, I was worried about a griefer, someone who would come in and grieve. So we had that for all the way up until launch. We had that, and then we started introducing apps where people could apply to join, and we did get a couple people, talk to them and vetted them. And I think one of the biggest things is we just didn't really recruit that much. Like, we recruited a couple players, some good players that were like people new from the past, but we didn't really like take, random people. So it was less of a concern for me to have that sort of, fifth horseman happen because of that. And I feel like we did a good job vetting and making sure that people that were in the guild were trustworthy. It also came back to bite us because we had like nobody left. And that's the take where originally I thought it was going to be much better to have a very limited guild and only people that are trustworthy. But I almost think that looking at something like HC Elite, it's worth just taking the risk and not vetting anyone and inviting everyone. Because people are willing to put in, 100 to 200 hours of work to get it to 60. They're likely not griefers. Like, what are the chances that you're actually a griefer? Like, you have to be a psychopath to actually do that. And obviously it's happened. So it's not like impossible. But generally people aren't griefers. So I think if I were to do it again, I wouldn't have a vetting process at all. Just send it with everybody.
Fair enough. Mates, just to sort of start to wrap it up on the Frontier front, and please, by all means, if you don't want to answer the questions or you're not comfortable with them, please tell me to go fuck myself. But I've tried to word this in a sort of easy fashion. You did have streamers like, Grays and Jokered. I say Jokered. I don't know if it's supposed to be Joker D or whatnot, but Jokered and Grays, vent their frustrations with Frontier at different points in time regarding their roles sometimes, Did you have any kind of internal clashes or burnout or people just getting frustrated with the guild at times? Or did you attribute that more to just like maybe the hardcore play style was catching up with people over time?
I think it's a little bit of both. I definitely think that I made a lot of flaws in the guild, and that caused some people to have issues with it. I mentioned earlier not delegating well basically meant that I was doing everything, and we'd have last minute signups. Things would go up at like non-friendly EU hours, and then rosters would go out in the morning so that EU didn't even sign up. There was like a lot of issues that, because I was kind of just spread so thin, I kind of let a lot of people down in different ways. I think that's one thing that Jokered, I never watched his rant, but that's one thing that we were doing. We were doing like kind of raids that we didn't plan on doing at NA times because we just didn't have the people in AU times, and that was, so a lot of the randomness and no strict schedule definitely caused issues within our guild. We were just kind of raiding every day. Whenever we had the people, we would raid, and it was really demanding. So,
did you have any issues? I'm guessing that you didn't, but and I'm not looking for the dirt here. I'm not looking for you to name names and fucking give us all the juicy goss or anything like that. But just in general, what was it like managing some of you know, in a guild where bigger streamers do flock to and do get put into the raid team. You know, you've got the likes of people like Seju, Jokered, Grays, who don't exactly have small audiences. I mean, fuck, I'm talking to you who had 25,000 people watching his stream for the KT kill, so maybe I should include you in this fucking conversation, Mr. Big Swing and Dick over here on the streaming side of things.
Okay, okay.
What was it like managing streamers at times, and did you have any awkwardness of like wanting to did you treat them like everyone else, or was there pressure to not do that?
There was definitely pressure to not do that. I would like to think of Frontier as not a streaming guild. I know a lot of people say that it kind of is, and there's a lot of people that do stream in Frontier, but for me, it was always player first. And I think that was shown in the streamers' actions as well. I made it very clear in the very beginning, before launches and guild meetings and whatnot, that it's not a popularity contest. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter to me whether you're a streamer or not a streamer. Like, I'm bringing you because of the player behind the screen, nothing else. And I think that caused a lot of people to just kind of be normal and not really, you know, be like necessarily treated differently or need to be treated differently. A lot of streamers, you know, can be sort of AFK in guild stuff, like, you know, signups, don't sign up or whatever. But people were generally really good about it. So no real issue on my end about that stuff.
Just on a
People
tangent,
are pretty respectful about it.
it's good to hear. It's genuine, and I sort of had guessed it was going to be the case there. Streaming was just tangentially. It was a funny little marriage, like I talked about with hardcore WoW. In terms of, it really was a marriage made in heaven, in my view. But if anything, it really did highlight the nature of streaming on the whole, in my mind. And what I mean by that is, it seems to be that a lot of people haven't necessarily had the veil lifted on what streaming is at times. And streaming often gets that analogy drawn between, you know, wrestling, like the WWE, and streaming. You know, it's all, everything you're watching is kind of fake and blown out of proportion, and you know, half acting, half, you know, scripted, whatever. Like, you don't, you know what I'm talking about. You know, take what you see on a stream, not necessarily at face value. And hardcore really was perfect for that. And you did get a lot of people commenting online going, you know, not realizing the waters were so muddied, like not realizing that this could have potentially been staged, but then also having things being called fake when they clearly weren't fake. It was a really interesting time. And I think a lot of people, particularly me, I sort of had that awakening moment where I was like, oh, right, I get what streamers do now. Whereas before I was maybe a little bit more of a stick in the mud, like, oh my God, look at this fucking idiot, blah, blah, blah. It's like, mate, they're doing it on purpose.
I think there's definitely a lot of acting and streaming, like overreacting or whatever. But in something like hardcore, I feel like people are watching because they want it to go wrong, not necessarily for the you know, the streamer content brain, where they're like faking deaths or like, you know, baiting people to like into bad situations so they get content for the stream. With hardcore, like pushing on KT, I was a little worried about people like baiting for content, but it didn't actually end up being an issue at all. I feel like people were there to play, and that was like enough for their streams.
Yeah, faking it for the content is something that I've begrudgingly grown more accustomed to over time, and I'm actually quite on board with the concept now. My major issue has been, and I think hardcore outed a lot of these streamers. Again, it comes back to the amount of effort that you're putting in. My major issue has been like, if you can't sell it well, then don't do it. You know, the old I'm just gonna fucking alt tab here right where I know where Hogger spawns. Oh no, what is happening to, like, fucking get inventive if you're gonna fake it.
Yeah, like Grays.
Mate, you said it, not me. I've
Uh,
been pretty fucking harsh on Grays, I have to admit. I've been happily putting the boot. And look, maybe I'm the fuckwit that he's been referencing when he sort of lashed out the other day and said, you know, I'm fucking sick of being the butt of everyone's jokes. I'm trying to fucking play this game and shit keeps happening to me. Look, I'm not an innocent party in that one. I've been putting the boot into Grays a little bit as well.
Yeah, it's definitely tragic. His death
Well, I mean, you're
was
the best person to
terrible.
ask. You're the best person to ask. You're the GM of the guild. He was saying, you know, he felt like a bit of a joke, I think, maybe even internally. I mean, how did you guys get along with Graves? I mean, I presumed everything was kind of fine until he said that.
Um, I don't think he was a joke internally. He was definitely. I mean, feral druids were a meme in our guild in general. I don't know if that's what he was referencing, but every single feral druid died that we had.
Mm,
Gordon died twice.
mm.
Ray's died twice. Saren died once. We just we had a rotating door of feral druids, and I don't know. I feel so bad for Gray's man. He died. He died 1 day before hardcore rag, and then 1 day before hardcore KT.
Mm. It
Trump.
would have been rough. It would have been very rough. I mean, he would have been looking forward to those streams, no doubt, as well. But like, also just to get the achievement, to sit there and do it side by side with you guys. I was particularly scathing, just mainly of his death in UBRS, just because it put other people
Yeah.
at risk, and that's where I felt the line had been crossed. But it is what it is. It's old news now. Mates, let me ask you in general about we'll divert off streamers and talk about Blizzard a little bit. You know, we'll go from one spicy topic to another. I just wonder what you would say about hardcore servers on the whole now, having the official servers delivered to us as a player base. I've been, you know, I was critical of Blizzard going into hardcore, saying that I feel like they left a better version of the game on the table. But having said that, you know, there is no doubt that what we've gotten has been a resounding success, and they deserve all the applause in the world, in my mind, for rolling out what they did. It is a shame that self-found mode wasn't included at the outset, but, you know, what's done is done. I think this is a huge W for them, and hopefully is a indicator maybe of what's to come in the future if they do keep listening to the players and giving players what they want when they ask for what could, you know, potentially be a popular game mode. Being such a hardcore, you know, aficionado as you are, no need to agree with me, but if I were to ask you to review official classic hardcore servers, would it be a massive thumbs up or like, from you?
It would definitely be a thumbs up. I definitely think that they did things right. And they've been very attentive to issues in the game. I think one thing that I saw yesterday was they fixed Warlock's griefing. You saw that they actually,
The summoning?
yeah, they made it so that when you summon, the portal takes you exactly to where the Warlock is standing and not in front of them.
That's the right change. I wrote I haven't published it yet. I wrote a like tips for hardcore video just over the last week. It's a fucking 10,000 word script. And one of the tips was like, be wary of Warlocks because you never know, but now they fixed it.
Yeah. Yeah. So they've been really active with things like that. They fixed volatile the summoning of ads. They fixed pet abandoning griefing. They've been really on top of making sure that the hardcore has some level of integrity. So I'm glad that it seems like they've actually been trying, which is really nice to see. Because there's definitely been times in the WoW space where it doesn't feel like they're trying. So it's nice to see.
Mates, before I want to talk a bit more about Blizzard and what's to come in the future, and we will return back to that what makes Classic good and the rating chill vibes and everything point that we raised so much earlier. Just before we get there, I want to just sort of tie off this chat about we've done the frontier thing, but now tie off the loose end about, you, Ahmpy, as a player, and not to go full like this is your life on you, but if I'm being blatantly honest with you, like many other observers over the last few weeks, you really did win me over. And it's funny that you mentioned that someone had a go at you for calling out your healer during the KT fight, because there were definitely moments that I've watched you over the last 2 months where I've gone like, oh, he really had a go at that person. That's a little like spicy, but I get it. It's all good. And there were moments where I was like, oh, this guy's such a good raid leader, but like, oh, he's not shy. He's not backwards in coming forward sometimes. And I reached out to you, God, what was it, a month ago, asking you to come on the show, and our schedules didn't quite line up. But I think it worked out really well. It's quite serendipitous that we got you on now rather than back then. But I remember just before I reached out to you, and I'm happy to say this to your face and have a bit of a laugh about it, and I hope you do too, mate. Please do take it with the tongue in cheek that I hope it's delivered. But just before I reached out to you, I messaged a mutual friend of ours, North, and I said,
Okay.
hey mate, I'm thinking of getting this Ahmpy guy on the show. What's his deal? Is he a fucking cockhead or not? I was like, I can't get a read on him. Is he good people? And North gave you a resounding thumbs up and said, mate, he's a lovely guy. Absolutely get him on the show. He'll be fantastic. And to be fair, Ahmpy, you fucking have been. I've really enjoyed talking with you. But another reason that I reached out to North is I'd seen, these stories about your past, and, people,
Oh, yeah.
people talk about the stuff at AQ and the Scarab Lord and everything, which is, God, I mean, I don't know now if it feels like obviously it was years ago, but if it feels like forever ago to you. But, you did get a bit of an infamous, title there through what was going on with Grizzly on Stalag, and people did, very much so tag you as the villain at one point in time. I think it's been an amazing character arc for you to have now everyone deeming you the hero through what's happened with Frontier, and I think it's really been fun to watch. But if I can probe you about, the classic years, how do you look back on all that? And I mean, if you're happy to tell people the story, how do you look back on all that now, given what's happened?
Do you mean just overall classic, or like specifically the Scarab Lord
Well,
issue?
I don't know if we'd have the time for overall classic, but if you want to generalize, were you? I mean, your guild had very much so had a horrible reputation. You were the
Yeah,
bullies.
that's where I was going to go with.
Yeah, we talked about it years ago on the show, I think, very briefly.
So one of the things that I was involved in a guild called Grizzly at the time, and we were known for being toxic. Like we, did things that would be considered toxic, like camping people and, making sure that Horde couldn't raid with world buffs before Boon, killing them in the mountain so they couldn't raid with world buffs. And it was a fun pastime to do that. It was very toxic, but definitely made us pretty infamous. And so come Scarab Lord, we transferred servers, but a lot of the people were still pretty similar. The server died, and everybody went there to where did we go? Sulfurous. And so come Scarab Lord, we do our thing. Now, this I think is the biggest what actually happened. So during our Scarab Lord grind, you have to kill like 40,000 bugs, whatever the number is. And we colluded with a guild on Horde side. I can't remember their name. But we basically took over a hive, and we had like Horde assassins that would come in to kill any people who were trying to get our tags, and really just monopolizing these mobs basically. That kind of made a lot of people hate us in the moment, and then we started griefing people around the Twilight Corruptor, which is a later part of the quest chain for Scarab Lord. And we'd, wipe raids. We'd have like 20 people there, so they couldn't get it done. And someone made the funny call that said, hey, let's right-click report him. not so funny, it turns out, because he got automatically banned for a couple days, which did get overturned. He did actually end up getting the Scarab Lord, so it wasn't an issue. But so people, there was a Reddit post about that. People were not happy about it, and they basically took up arms against us to make sure that we didn't get ours, and they camped the dragon for like 10 hours, so I couldn't turn the quest in. That was the what happened. So that's the arc. Um,
So yeah, I mean, a lot of people, and by all means, I encourage people to look this one up if you don't know the full story. Um, all in all, I mean, it's fairly. I think it's fair to characterize, like you said, you know, it was infamous. You guys very much so were like deemed villains through your actions and all that shit through that. And I mean, it's you know, by your own admission, it was what I think most players would agree to categorize as pretty toxic behavior. But like, hey,
yeah,
you know, the game lets you do it, and you chose to go down that avenue. But that was what now, 3 years ago, whatever. Um, I don't want to go as far as being like, because you know I don't know you that well, Ahmpy. I don't know much about what you're doing these days, but like I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, you know, you fully, you know, changed your spots or changed your stripes or whatever. But like I could hear in all your streams through hardcore that like you did seem like you've very much so become a player that now all of a sudden cared for the guild, cared for this goal that you were chasing, and took the time to, you know, try to be the hero, as we're saying. And like I'm saying here is like, in your own words, do you feel like you've changed as a WoW player? Do you feel like, I dare say, have matured as a WoW player? Like you play it differently now? What do you think what's the reason between what's the reason behind that guy 3 years ago and the guy you are now?
I definitely think I've matured as a player, but I don't think I've changed that much. I think it's just the environment that you know, you're around people who are going to do things that are toxic. You're going to do things that are toxic. I think that's one of the things that has changed since then. Is I kind of have separated from the whole Grizzly arc. It's just not where I want to be, not what I want to stream, not what I want to play. So I definitely have matured in that regard. So it definitely changed me a little bit.
Product of your environment.
Yeah, I think so. Because I don't know. I don't even think that I was that toxic in Grizzly necessarily. Um, I definitely participated in some group toxic actions, but I wasn't like personally attacking people or like, you know, being like, I was just playing the game, having fun. And it happened to be at the expense of others, and now I'm doing it just without that. So
I should say, whilst we'll move on, but the last thing I'll just say is like, thanks so much, obviously, for being okay with chatting about that a little bit. But also, I have to have a slight dig at our friend North. You do know North, right?
oh yeah,
Yeah. So as I said, North had some very nice things to say about you, but I don't want you to feel compelled to say nice things about him. Look, North is on the show as a very much so recurring guest. I personally love him like a fucking son. Tell us anything. The listeners have grown to love North over time. They all fucking hated him when he first came on the show 4 or 5 years ago, and now they all absolutely adore him. Give us some fun words about North if you can.
North is a very passionate guy for sure. Uh, every time I interact with North, he's always like jumping up to do something, or he's just very excited to do things. I don't know. I haven't interacted with him for a little bit. He was going to join our guild for hardcore. I'm kind of disappointed that he didn't, but you know, he's a fun guy.
I'm glad to hear
I have a lot of stories about North, but I don't know if we want to get
if they're
into that.
publishable. No, it's all right. We all know North's a piece of shit. It's fine.
I ranked with him for a little bit, so I was there when he was at his worst. You know, playing 20 hours a day, not sleeping. You know,
Oh my god, I can only
I've seen
imagine.
some more things.
Um, Mates, just to we'll wind up there on you and Frontier and everything. We'll just take a little bit of time now, just real quick, just to get some of your thoughts on the future for WoW. Look, you really did pique my interest when you started talking about the reason why people love Classic is that it's easy, and I completely agree with you. Um, I think just to get you back in that frame of mind, I think one of the greatest things that I'm seeing personally in the online chit chat these days surrounding Classic is that not only are people realizing that, but the important part of the equation is that people are becoming okay with that. There was this sort of retail versus classic thing a few years ago when classic first came out, where retailers were like, "Oh, you fucking losers just like classic because it's so easy," and we were like, "No, no, it's the open, it's the world, and it's the RP aspect, and it's everything." And it's like, yeah, don't get me wrong, it is all that stuff too, but we are allowed to come out and say, yes, we like it because it's easy. I'm more than comfortable with saying that. And I think I see more classic players now kind of leaning into that and being like, yeah, all right, so fucking what? It's easy and I'm cool with that. It's great. I get to smoke a fucking cigarette. I get to have a fucking beer while I raid. I get to put my feet on the table. I get to have Netflix on because classic raiding is simple and I get my gratification out of it and I get my loot and I walk away happy and everyone has a good time. Over there in whatever other MMO or retail or whatever you're doing, you have to press 5,000 APM. You have to fucking, have done your 65 million hours worth of research. I just don't want to play at that high octane intensity. Sue me. I think it is in Blizzard's interest to lean into that going forward. They did SOM and the raids were harder, and that wasn't necessarily as well received, even though we asked for it. We probably realized that maybe that wasn't the best answer. I think that that's something that should be embraced going forward. How do you feel about it? And do you understand what I'm saying now, where people seem more comfortable with saying, yes, I like this game because it's easy?
Yeah, I think a lot of people initially just like the game, and when somebody says, "Oh, I don't like it, it's too easy," they're kind of like hurt, even if they don't you necessarily want to admit it. I feel like a lot of people were almost like protective of classic, like, "Oh no, I can't believe you don't like this game. Like, what the really?" Um, and I think now people are kind of getting to the point where it's like, you know, yeah, it is easy, and I'm okay accepting that, and it's you're not necessarily like attacking me for saying that. I think a lot of people took it as like a personal offense. Like early on, like 2019 Classic's too easy, I'm not playing it. People got really offended.
Hmm. What do you think?
Um,
What do you think Blizzard's doing next?
I don't know what Blizzard is doing. I hope that it's Classic related content.
Well,
I hope that
they've
they
said
make
100% there's something classic in the pipeline. So I think it's fair to say, from everything they've said, let's do the presumption, and I really think it's fair to do this. Cata
I'm just gonna
Classic,
say that.
put Cata Classic aside. Let's just presume that's coming. We've, for all intents and purposes, been told something classic related, not Cata Classic, but classic related, has been worked on for some time now. So, what do you think that thing is?
I mean, it's got to be Classic Plus. But what do you think so? Is that where you were
I
going?
100% agree, and I've been
Yeah.
screaming it for 6 months, and I deal with all the hopium and copium cat calls that you get. I'm one of those guys. Like, I don't give a fuck if I'm wrong. I like having fun. I'll make a projection. I don't give a shit. But like, I tell you what, I will do is that I can assure you that if Classic Plus gets announced, I mean, I'll be the first one screaming on the podcast. The first thing I'll say after BlizzCon is fuck every single one of you cunts that said Classic Plus was never, ever, ever going to be a million thing in a million years. Now, I think you're about to say what I've been saying as well, Ahmpy, which is Classic Plus can mean a million different things, and they could twist the definition in a way that, like, here's Classic Plus, and they haven't added that
Right.
much.
I
So who
I
knows?
I hope that they do some crazy changes. I hope they just try something out. because I feel like Classic is a great game and it's almost like a formula. As long as they keep to the formula of Classic and they keep emergent gameplay and, you know, world the same and they have like iconic, lore characters and abilities and classes that are classic, it'll be a success as long as it stays true to the core of Classic now.
Mm. And that's really the key point is like I think that they have very much so worked out, I've said this a few times, where their bread is buttered. They know that drastic changes would be the bad decision. You can add content without making drastic changes to the core of the game. Do you agree with that? Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, like imagine if they did something like they had a NAX version. They had some content come out after NAX,
Hmm.
and it was like a Scarab Lord Part 2. It was just a
Hmm.
completely different quest chain. They just made a bunch of content for that chain.
Hmm.
Something like that would be Classic Plus. Maybe it unlocks a new raid that's not super hard, but difficult, tuned like NAX, something like that. It would be well received, I swear. I mean,
Let me ask you the
I-
tough question. If they came out and announced that they were, in light of everything they've learnt, they come out on stage and say, look, you all like Classic, so we've heard you that some of you want Classic Plus, but we figured we're not going to do that. If you just like Classic, here's your re-release of 2019 Classic. Let's do it all again, people. If that was the announcement, what would your reaction be?
I would be a little upset because I feel like they've let Classic Plus kind of fester in people. Like
Mm.
people have been saying, "Oh, it's Classic Plus." There's like rumors going around, like people are really excited about it. And I think it would be kind of disingenuous to release something like that, like a re-release with no, like pretending it's a big announcement.
Mm.
So I have faith that it's not something like that.
Mm. So do
Because I
I.
feel like, yeah, I feel like if they're gonna wait to BlizzCon to announce something, it better be fucking big.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think I would like to think they're smart enough to not like ostentatiously jump out on a stage and be like, we're just giving you another classic server as per usual.
Right.
Um,
What do you're thinking about Classic Plus? What is your favorite Classic Plus idea?
I'm this is going to sound odd. I don't like I would like to see new content, don't get me wrong. But I'm more invested in the minor changes than I am new content. Now, don't get me wrong. I want Classic Plus with new content. I want it. I want it. I want it. But if we were negotiating and like for some reason that wasn't feasible, which I do think it is feasible and I do think they're doing that, but at a bare minimum, I would take a re-release classic just with the minor class tweaks. If I know it's hard to do, but it is doable. Um, you know, making it so it's not World of Warrior Craft, I think that's got to be your one thing. Is like, if we're doing classic
Yeah.
again, we can't just do the everyone plays a warrior thing again. I just think it's like after this much time, we're ready for a different perspective, and people kind of like, if MMOs teach us anything, it's people love customization. People want to feel like they are or own a character. People want to play balanced druids. People want to play ret paladins, and they don't want to feel like the game is punishing them for making a decision like that the game offers them in the first place. Now, I agree that homogenization of classes is the worst fucking thing that ever happened to World of Warcraft, but you don't have to homogenize the classes in order to not make it World of Warriorcraft, in my opinion.
How would you balance a class like Hunter? I'm curious because like Hunter is objectively bad in raid,
Mm.
but it's insane in PvP. And I think this is an issue that I've thought about. Like I'm really against class changes, specifically because I feel like if they're going to do class changes, it'll be holistic for the class
Mm.
and not PvE only.
Well,
So if they make
yeah,
something like Shadow Priest viable in PvE, all of a sudden they're S plus 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 tier on PvP, and everyone's going to play a Shadow Priest for PvP,
yeah.
and it's just going to be broken. And people, I feel like Classic is actually relatively balanced compared.
No,
It's definitely
I agree with you.
unbalanced, but
I sorry, you
as
go, you
a
go.
MMO, it's super balanced. Like druids, boomkins aren't viable in raid, but you know, druids as a whole are kind of a support class anyways. Like their viability isn't necessarily based on their DPS.
I 100%
Um,
agree. The only problem is we're dealing with the 2023 mindset. So that was all well and
right.
good 20 years ago, but with the modern go go go, I have to pump mindset. I think that you kind of have to somewhat appease to that. And what I'm
Yeah.
saying is, I don't think you need to buff everyone. Like Hunter's a great example. Like, why do you fucking need to change Hunter? I don't think that everyone should be. I don't think it should be like retail. I don't think everyone should do -1 or 2% the same damage.
Right.
But I do think the people on the floor are so on the floor, it's ridiculous that something needs to be changed there. Now, everyone can tear me apart as to how I'm wrong on this, but my caveat would be you're spot on, Ahmpy. PvP is the thing that people have to remember. I think they would do something kind of like what they've been doing with Wrath, with the glyph changes, where they just straight up say, this does not affect PvP. So, like, here's a big
Yeah.
change for you, but it doesn't fucking work on player characters. I think
I would
personally
agree with that.
that's the way to do it.
Yeah, 100%. I actually really agree with that. I think that's really smart too. I was thinking, I'm like, how would they do it? Would they just like make a buff in raid, like, oh, Hunter does 5% more damage in raids? Like, or Boomkin, Wrath casts an additional time proc randomly in raids, like just give it like a little bit of a bonus, like a
Mm.
fun, damage bonus, make him a little more viable, something like that, but only works in raids. I think that's the way they would have to do it because PvP is actually really balanced. I mean, it's not really balanced. Okay, there's definitely OP classes, but
But
like
people generally like the rock paper scissors nature of it. I do.
yeah, I think it's in a good position now, and I feel like any changes could seriously make him crazy.
Oh yeah,
Like one thing I've seen a lot of people say is like give Crusader Strike to Rep Paladins,
no,
and
that's
that
it's a
would
mistake.
make
Yeah.
yeah, that would make PvP unbalanced.
Mm.
Everyone would play Rep Paladin one shot.
Yeah, my controversial take, I'm with you, is whenever I say minor changes, I'm always talking about rating. My
Yeah,
thing is like PvP should not be touched at all.
yeah, I think
It
they
is
would mess with
balanced.
PvP really quick.
Yeah.
It's such a fine line.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do. Um, I mean, it's good to know though. But like it sounds like you're very much so probably gonna be playing whatever they release next, though, right?
Oh yeah, I'm actually gonna play in hardcore. I'm making a shaman for the first time ever. I'm
Oh,
not even joking. Like, never played a shaman in any game, any version of the game ever. So I'm actually playing a shaman because if Horde is really good in Classic Plus, I want the option to be able to play shaman. Like, oh, I knew shaman before it became,
yeah.
this. Like, I want to know in case it's really OP, so I could play it. So it's a little bit of a bonus for me there.
It's
But we'll
really
see
fun playing
often.
classes you've had no experience with. Like that was me with Warrior and Hardcore, and I really have to probably attribute half of my fun in Hardcore WoW to the fact that I was playing a Warrior for the first time. It's always fun just for some reason picking up this class that you've ignored for years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm having fun with it. I'm doing with Gray's Shaman Warrior. It's definitely an experience. We're not quite high level yet, but I'm looking forward to chain healing.
Very good. So did you say you were duoing with Grays?
Yeah,
Oh, very good. Oh, that's the thing. I mean, you're probably good mates with Grace. You can tell him that you did an interview with the cunt that's been calling him out for the last few weeks. But anyway, mate, I'll let you go on that note. But look, before we let you go, any shout outs or, I mean, obviously plug anything you need to plug and please let people know where they can find you on stream. But also any shout outs from Frontier, any particular people that you feel like didn't get their spot in the limelight that they deserve, that did great work, anyone you just want to like get the word out on?
All the people that helped out, just Karishin, Denakina, Summoners, Wave. That's a lot of people didn't necessarily get a spotlight in raid. We're in top DPS, we're in every single raid. Maybe they died, whatever. Burning. The people still helped out a lot, and everyone deserves the credit. I like to say that, everyone who died along the way helped us get there. Like we really were like it was a guild effort to get to that point where we couldn't have done it without everyone. So it's really a guild achievement more than just the 40 people who were in the raid.
That's so. Well, look, let me say huge congratulations to you and Frontier for doing it. And I'll be ending the stream soon, but we've got people from the Classic team in chat as well saying huge congrats to you guys as well. So that's great to see. They're taking notes on everything you've said about what you want out of Classic Plus as well, Ahmpy. So there you go. Look, mates, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm so glad that we did wind up doing this and that we could organise it. And that North did give you the glowing review and have convinced me that you weren't an asshole and I should get you on the podcast. So, mate, thank you so much for taking a couple of hours out of your day, and I wish you nothing but the best moving forward. It's been an absolute pleasure, mate.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you, man. I really enjoyed talking to you.
All good. Mate, hang around. I'll end the stream. I'll catch you later. I'll have a quick word to Ahmpy off stream, but thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll publish this one on the podcast in the next few days, and I'll see you all later. Thanks for stopping by, Tim. You're a fucking legend. Congrats on your promotion again. I'll say that again. You're a fucking legend. And guys, I'll talk to you later. Bye.